Miranda and I go deep on the struggles we've endured to honor our core values of integrity and faith. You'll feel at peace with your own struggles as we share the ways we've grown over the past few years. This is episode 3 of season 1, The Power of Purpose. I am Sam Henninger, the Courage Coach for Executives, and your host. Here, you can learn to make tough decisions through emotional intelligence and collaboration, to grow outside of your comfort zone through humble self-awareness, and to love your life by being truly honest with yourself and others. Subscribe and share with your friend. We release new episodes every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So, I was just talking to Miranda about how a filler word for me is so, and I am working on that a lot.
I would cut that out.
Yeah, that's whatever. We're just going.
If you notify people of that, then they're going to pay attention to it, and every time you say so, they'll know it.
Well, maybe I'm just going to cut out every so that I catch in the edit from now on. But either way.
Anyway.
This episode, we're talking about integrity being my number 2 core value, and yours being faith. Which both of these are huge subjects.
Yeah. They're
cliche.
A little cliche, but they have a lot of depth.
Right. And I think that's, again, what this whole series is about, and this whole exercise for you and whoever you want to do this with, is taking something that's superficial and making it yours, making it really important to you, and being able to talk about that. So
that's what a value is. It's something that you take and you increase the importance and validity of it in your life to a point where it governs your choices and your actions.
Yes. Let's start with some definitions, and then I have questions for you, and I'll answer them myself if you don't have any questions for me.
Okay. I'm
the question guy.
Sam is very good at questions. If you guys ever want someone to just ask you fabulous questions, just sit down and talk with him. He's great at it.
Interview series forthcoming. Look forward to that. But integrity, to me, here's some words that come up for me when I think about integrity: trustworthiness, predictability, consistency, disregard for words. I wrote this down earlier. I have to dissect that one a bit. Perfectionism, steadfastness. Thinking back to when I had written these words down, I was really struggling with this value of integrity because it's mixed up for me in a lot of ways with ideas that frustrate me. Ideas.
How so?
So I'll get there. It rubs me the wrong way when I hear over and over this drumbeat of consistency being the marker, the big thing that leads to success and happiness in life, because I haven't always felt myself to be consistent with things. And I say this as I'm actually about to celebrate having recorded 1,000 fasts in my tracking app. It's frustrating to me because in some ways it's been hard for me to own the word integrity, because other people make it to mean something that I feel like I can't live up to, or it isn't me. It isn't my value. And so trying to find how integrity is me, is what I value most, has been frustrating because I struggle with perfectionism. And
you do.
And so thinking of integrity as I took a poll a few days ago prior to this, just asking people, what does integrity mean to you? And so much of it is doing the same thing that you would if someone were looking or if they weren't. Like being the same person behind closed doors as out in public. And I get that. And I think that's important to talk about. But for me, that hasn't always really been an issue for me. It has been an issue of thinking, if I don't do every single thing right every single time, then I can't be someone that sees integrity as a core value.
Mm-hmm.
And that's discouraging.
Yeah.
And then having courage as my top value, it's rough. It's rough struggling with this idea of like, I do aspire to these values, but
well, it's important to remember, like, even though like these values, they govern our lives and they are things that like push us through or pull us through, however you want to feel, that we're still human. We still make mistakes. Even with consistency, yeah, you can be consistent with something every day of your life, all of the time. But when you're starting off on something, you are going to fail. Or if you have a big life change, and like there's going to be times where, and circumstances where you're not able to do everything to the same level as you always would. And that goes with any of the values, because life happens, we're human, we are imperfect beings. And if we are always measuring ourselves up to this perfect person, then we never will feel like we're measuring up to enough.
I think that's where I'm feeling. That's where I've struggled with this. Because when I think about the word integrity, it occurred to me, and maybe you've heard of this before, the topic of integrity is a well-worn one. But for me, I'm approaching this with some fresh eyes and some fresh reflection. And one thing that stood out to me was the connection between the words integrity and disintegrated. Mm. When we think about disintegrated, I think about like super villain's disintegration ray, where like you turn someone into like a bunch of ash instantaneously. Mm. You disintegrate them. But to be integrated means that all of your pieces fit together, all the pieces of who you are. And as I was thinking about that, it occurred to me, and maybe you can follow along with this logic here, because some of it's conscious, a lot of it's probably unconscious, of the way people place trust in others. Mm-hmm. Is for someone to trust someone else, the reason you would do that is to decrease the stress in your life, to make something more predictable so that you don't have to be on guard all the time. I'm thinking just like in a very primal sense. Yeah. Of, if I can trust that you're going to behave predictably in a given set of circumstances, then I can feel safe around you. And if I can feel safe around you, we can build a relationship together. The test then is to see if they can be trusted. Mm-hmm. And some people do this innately. Innately. I was going to say in a conniving way.
Oh, complete opposite.
Yeah. I was going to say some people are malicious about this. That's not what I'm interested in talking about. We should be aware of that. But I think it's a natural, not necessarily a negative thing, just to see how much trust can I put in someone, and then just observe in any given scenario, how far do they have to be pushed before they break that trust I gave them. And in the best case scenario, you learn that they will keep that trust, that they are integrated. They can't be chipped away. They can't be disintegrated to a point where they break that trust. And so that, to me, I mean, again, it comes back to that idea of being trustworthy. And that's really where I'm coming from when it comes to integrity. I've been in the circumstances where I've placed my trust in someone that didn't deserve it. And I got hurt. And I've also been the one to break that trust and hurt others. And it's it's not a good situation. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Being one who values and aspires to integrity means so much to me, because I have to have courage to do it.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you've been hurt before, like, giving trust is something that isn't as easy. Like, you think of a child, though, like, kids give trust completely, especially to those that are around them on a regular basis. Like, they completely trust them. And to be a child again, right? Like, as we grow, we learn that, like, there are people who don't deserve that trust. And we slowly start to build this judgment system within us to say, okay, well, based on their actions so far, they're trustworthy or they're not so trustworthy. And, like, that's the world that we navigate in. And even if we're not doing it consciously, like, everyone that we meet, we say, okay, well, I can trust them with this, or I can trust them with this. And trusting someone isn't necessarily completely and 100% trusting them with everything. There's different levels of trust. Like, you have, and you build that trust throughout building that relationship. Like, you have your acquaintances, your new friend that you just made. And so you have a trust level of a certain amount. And then as you become closer friends and that trust is tested, like, then you develop that stronger trust over time.
I think why this has been such a struggle for me, and yet still something that I truly value and find core to who I am, is I have had that exercise of trust used maliciously against me with my previous marriage. I'll just keep it simple in saying trust must be earned, but it also has to be given. And when someone who is trustworthy has that trust withheld by the other party, it's weaponized. For me, it's been really important to understand that my sense of trustworthiness is something I can know of myself, within myself, whether or not the other person chooses to extend that trust back to me. Now, it's very important to be open to that communication and understand what they need or what they're seeing. But sometimes they're not willing to give that. And for me, having a deeper understanding of who I am, where I stand with myself at the end of the day, who I am behind closed doors, like when you're by yourself, that's what that means. Like, can you look at yourself in the mirror and be okay with who you see? Can you look yourself in the eye, in the mirror, and be satisfied with who's looking back. And that's not to say that we don't have this divine discontent of always trying to improve and be more. But integrity is different from that, because you can aspire, but still understand I am doing my best. I'm trying to be who I can be and then do more. So it's about not just trusting others, being trustworthy, worthy of others' trust, but trusting yourself.
Yeah.
So tell me about faith.
Now that we've talked about
we can come back, but let's talk about faith.
Faith, it has different aspects. Of course, you have your religious aspect where you have faith in a god or a deity. But I think we have also more of a temporal or more of a regular life aspect of that too. And it kind of goes back into that integrity that we were talking about, where you have that faith. And whenever I'm defining things, I really like going back to like dictionary definitions. And so I looked up faith. And even though it's something that I've grown up around, just going back to that definition, and it's a complete trust or confidence in someone or something. And then it's also a strong belief in a God or in the doctrines of religion based on a spiritual apprehension rather than proof. So like you have both of those, but I feel more strongly towards like that first one, where like faith is a complete confidence or trust in someone or something. And for me, that's can be both with other people or situations that I'm in, or with God. And like there's been different challenges with all of that over the past several years. And yeah, I don't know what else you want me to expand on that. Like,
tell me more. Tell me more about what that means to you.
Yeah. So being able to have like a complete trust or faith in someone or something, and granted, like this can have levels too. Just like we were talking about the trust, like that faith isn't going to be 100% on day one. It takes time and effort and work to build that faith in someone or in something. And yeah, so I guess this is all like icing. Like
yeah.
You want me to get to the cake?
Go deeper. We get it, but what about you?
What about me?
Yeah.
So why is faith important to me? I mean, faith is important to me. It's, like I said, it's something that I grew up with. It's being able to have that complete trust in something or someone is, I mean, ironically, it's freeing in a way where, like, I mean, kind of like you were saying, like, whenever, like, having that trust in someone allows you to relax. It allows you to release that stress. And when I'm able to, like, find something that I can have faith in and that I do believe in, then, like, there's, like, so many other things fall into place because that's taken care of. And through this exercise, it's kind of interesting. I mean, in a way, that faith also appeared in my top here. Because in my Clifton Strengths themes, belief is one of my top 5 as well. And so, like, so the faith and belief are very similar in many aspects, because like that belief is also something that is a guiding set of rules or philosophies that guide your life and that allow for those choices that you're making. And it's a strong sense of core values, I guess, is what it is, down at the heart of it.
It's really interesting you bring that up, because what we do with our clients is we take your Clifton strengths, your top 10, and your top 10 core values, and we help weave those into a rope, basically, or however you want to think of it, a net, a supporting structure that gives you power and strength in how you do your work, in the work you choose to do, and how you approach each of your relationships, especially with yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's great that you made that connection, because that's precisely what we do. Now, don't get freaked out or discouraged by thinking 10 Clifton strengths and 10 core values. That's a lot to consider.
A lot of them, like, they're just different ways of looking at you. And it allows you to see, like with this, they overlap in a lot of aspects. And the Clifton strengths are essentially another word for, well, I mean, in some aspects, another word for the values. Or your values are another word for the Clifton strengths. And it's just something that helps you identify with things that you are naturally good at or that are naturally important to you.
And not to get too far off topic, because I want to keep it on Miranda right now, but just to mention, when you're thinking about 20 data points to build a deeper understanding of yourself around, it's very simple, because most people rely on a small handful most of the time. That's what they're most familiar with and most conscious of. But the purpose of building out the rest of that is when you're going through big changes in life, making difficult choices.
Or a crisis.
A big transition of some sort.
Think of the past couple years for everybody.
Yeah. It helps to have backup. It helps to have a better understanding of where you go when the things you do most, when the things you rely on most, fail you. And it's not you failing, it's the way you go about things that aren't working the way they used to. So it helps to have more tools to bring up to help you get through the challenges you're facing.
Well, I think that's a good segue into like going back into faith with me. Because in some ways over the past couple years, I guess, like I would say that I have gone through a bit of a crisis of faith. Not so much of like questioning my beliefs, of like saying, well, do I believe in God, or like do I believe in my religion, or whatever that is, like, because all of that has been very solidified for me. I don't think anything's going to move that. But my relationship with God changed because I felt let down. I'm sure that a lot of our listeners can probably relate, where sometimes in life where we feel like we deserved something or were promised something or expected something, and that didn't happen, or it happened in a different way than we wanted to. And so we're disappointed. There were a lot of aspects that affected my state of mind and my state of being that affected that relationship.
What do you mean? I appreciate you explaining this, but also it's vague.
Okay, well, so 3 years ago, I guess, almost 3 years ago, we were pregnant with our youngest right now, and I developed pregnancy-related depression, which was hard because depression was never something that I had experienced in my life.
This was your first time
up to that point. And there were a lot of other factors, like COVID just started with the shutdowns, and we started
living away from home.
I didn't recently start living away from home, but I was away from home.
Pregnant in a pandemic, away from your parents.
And we started working with some foster boys, some teenage boys. And they were good boys at heart, but had struggles that they were dealing with that then I began dealing with. And like it was just a lot going on. And then the delivery of our baby didn't happen as I had hoped. Our first was very textbook, and like went into labor on my due date, and it was delivered within a few hours of.
They didn't even have time to finish your, what was it?
Antibiotics.
Yeah, you didn't even get to finish the antibiotics, let alone.
Well, because they didn't believe I was going to stay at the hospital. Yeah. They thought they were going to send me home. But like it all just happened, like just very textbook, and we were in and out. And but with our second, she was turned sideways, so she was transverse, and we ended up having to have a C-section, and there was a lot of different things with that.
I kept trying to flip her, but she wouldn't stay flipped.
She's stubborn. She still is.
Yes.
But we love her to death. And then after that, I guess retreated more into depression is a good term.
Yeah.
The postpartum depression was worse than the pregnancy-related depression. And I don't remember a whole lot of that first year of her life. What I remember are mostly from pictures and videos, which is like sad because that newborn little stage is like so precious and so sweet. But I don't remember a whole lot. I have snippets of memory that aren't related to looking at pictures or a video.
And I'll say, from how I know you, you more than a lot of people relate to the present through your memories. And so to have that taken from you, for no one's fault, but just to have that taken from you has been exceptionally painful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know that I will ever get those memories back, which is sad too. I mean, I guess if I were to, like, out of her whole life, if I were to have to pick 1 year of her life that I wouldn't remember, I mean, I guess it's a good year.
Probably the one she won't really remember.
But like, so like in the grand scheme of things, like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal, but it is, because it's something that is important because she's important. But like another aspect to that though was because of all of that depression, I was also had a harder time attaching to her. And so because of all of this, like my relationship and my value of faith was shaken because I didn't feel like it was fair. I don't feel like it is fair, but I mean, life isn't fair, right? But that doesn't mean that the trust that I have that God is there and that he loves me and cares about me and wants what's best for me, like, that doesn't mean that I don't believe that. I do still believe that. The thing that I guess the point of the crisis of faith that I have is believing that the circumstances of things that have happened are in my best interest. And because I innately want to believe that, but I have to go through a process to mentally believe that as well.
So where are you at now versus where you were?
In a much better place. Now I would say I'm probably about 70 to 80% back to my original stance. Pre-pregnancy.
Okay. It's very interesting to me to hear you tell that story. Again, for me, we've talked about this. I have privileged access since I'm your husband. I have to hear it all, right? But I get to. Yes, I get to. But between the two of us, the stories we've chosen to share demonstrate the evolution of pursuing these values, of being in relation to these core values we have. Because I went from some understanding, maybe just the dictionary understanding of integrity and valuing that and trying to embody that, and learning that there are instances where what's most important is how I view myself, how I trust myself. Do I feel trustworthy? And that being a source of understanding whether or not I have integrity. And then letting that flow out into other relationships.
Well, I find it really interesting that both of our second values on our list are ones that we have struggled through over the past several years. And I'd be interested to see like anyone else's like list and see how that relates too. Of like, okay, well, this is your most important thing and this is your second most important thing. I think it's kind of telling that the thing that you're struggling with is something that is also a highly important value.
I think you're right. I see this with Clifton Strengths as well, where we get people's, we're talking about values, so we'll get people's natural values or their natural talents that turn into strengths. And then we get a mix of aspiration where they feel like they're not this and they really want to be that way. And part of what drives that is because they feel the pain of not being that way. Not to say, again, because you had mentioned like there is a foundation of faith in your life that is not negotiable here, not being affected, but there was an evolution, a more nuanced relationship to God that you developed through
are developing
through trauma, through pain. And for me, I feel the same way. Like we've been able to, with time and understanding, conversation, gradually transform pain into productivity, towards currency that we can cash in on to more fully embody our core values. And that's what we're showing you that you can do. You've probably felt it yourself. Maybe you're feeling this in the language we're using. Maybe you feel it in different language, and that's fine. What we really want to show you is talking about core values is not just talking about these are the things I am already really good at being, and that's what I'll just focus on more. There is room for aspiration. There is room for acknowledging I really feel like others are better at this than I am, but I see the value in it. I want to be more of that. Or I see where I fell short and I want to get better. I think that desire is the indicator that it's a core value of yours.
Yeah. I think allowing that process to happen and not trying to force it, but also not trying to restrict it is important. And life is more like the current in a river than a wall. Like it's something that ebbs and it flows and it increases and it decreases, and one thing will be more important in one stage of life than another, and it changes. It's not always going to be the same. I mean, the thing that comes to mind right now is the song from Pocahontas where you never step in the same river twice, because it's always moving and it's always changing. And that's what life is. Like, you're never in the same spot. You're always going to be different. But that doesn't mean that it's always completely different. Like, there are similarities and there is sameness, even though things change.
And I'll say, again, since the one I'm talking about tonight is integrity, and I see integrity as being related to reliability, predictability, that as we go down the rest of this season, down to our number 10 core theme, core value, we're talking about this in rank order, meaning each preceding one serves the ones that came before. So once we get to number 10, that's probably going to be the most flexible for us, the one that's most likely to change with the times. The closer we get up to the top, those are going to be the ones that stand with us forever and always. And if you haven't gotten to this point in having done the exercise and really having thought this through, if you still feel like your top 1, 2, maybe even 3 are interchangeable, maybe a little mixed up depending on the situation, spend some more time on it, because it really should be the one thing that you are committed to across all situations. Which, again, this is just for the sake of conversation, for the sake of understanding yourself better. It's not to say you're limited to just doing that one thing. We're just trying to drive home the idea that the things that are most important to you need to be known. Because the more you make them known, the easier it's going to be to call them forth when you need them.
No. And I think it's perfectly okay to say that something is a close call. That because with the values, like, these are things that are really important to you. And I think that there may be times where they are really close in intensity or level of importance. And if you're having a hard time of saying, oh, well, this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, then you may be in a period of flux, and that's okay. And even if your life seems pretty stable and solidified, your personal self may be in an area of flux where you're trying to figure out, what am I doing? What do I want to do? What's really important to me? And maybe sit with it for a minute and say, okay, well, choose one way and sit with it for a little bit and see if and then come back to it and say, is this really how I feel? And that may help you to determine what really is most important.
I agree with that. The value here of understanding your core values and understanding others' core values, because you get to help others along their way. But talking about yourself, when you have this language of core values, it really helps orient you during those times of flux. Miranda, what do you think it would look or feel like to not have this language of core values during those times?
Like a common language with like you, or like a close person?
For yourself,
or
just a self-awareness.
If you're not able to, if I wasn't able to like say, well, this is what I value, this is what's important to me, then, and that's hard because you aren't able to articulate what you want and what you need. Because a lot of these values are things that you thrive off of. Like for me, my top two are family and faith. Like, I feel like that is the heart of me. Like those, like if you took everything else away and I had my family and my faith, I could make it. Like I would figure it out. But if you take away my family, it's like, well, what's the point? Or if you take away my faith, like, what's the point? And if I still had my family, like, there'd be a little bit of a point there, but because that's my top. And if you took away my family and I still had my faith, like, there'd be a little bit to go there. But if you took it all away, then there's nothing left of me.
Yeah. You bring up a good point that, to me, it brought up the idea that I talk about often with clients, that with core values, similar to with Clifton Strengths, your top 10 themes, these, having a language around it, having your definition of what each of these words mean, it also helps you detect when your values have been offended, when they've been invalidated. And so without that language or a conscious understanding, a self-awareness around these things, you get this vague frustration that just turns into misplaced anger or sadness. And that can be extremely disorienting because you think you're just living life the best way that someone should, because you're unconsciously, you're naturally living out your values, but you're not aware of the values you have and how you live them out. There's lots of different ways to live your values.
Yeah.
Typically, we live them a certain set of ways. It's only through more self-awareness that we explore a bit better of what are other ways to honor these values. But without that language, we suffer. And then we see others suffer because we can't help them when they don't know how to ask for what they need. It's hard to be of support. And when two people are unconscious of when they lack self-awareness of what matters most to them individually, let alone what the other person values most, you can still have a healthy, happy relationship, it just makes those times of flux or change or maturation harder. It doesn't have to be.
I mean, it's still going to have a level of hard, but you don't have that common language to say, well, this is what I want to remain important to me during these times of flux.
We're thinking back to earlier in our conversation where we realized that painful experiences we were able to transform into living our core values even stronger. Without the common language, the consequence here would be you're still going to have the pain, but the transformation isn't a sure thing. Or the amount, the level of transformation. It may take more time to fully, transmute or transform that pain into something useful, something you can grow with. So the more you can do this, the better. Because self-awareness really is, it's a currency. It's money that you can cash in on yourself to get better, to become more of who you were born to be. What do you wish our listeners would do?
I just kind of based off of our conversation throughout this, if you feel like you're struggling with a value or something that is important to you, look at it a little closer. See where that pain is coming from. See if it's something that is helping you to grow. Like, see how it can help you grow, I guess. Versus just dwelling on the pain. Because it can be really easy to just sit in that pain and to become that victim. We're in a society of victimhood. And if you allow yourself to stay there, you're never going to live your life to the amount that you were intended to. And if you allow your values to become the thing that victimizes you, then you're in a whole world of hurt.
I'll add to this in saying, I like the angle you came from, where don't just sit in the pain and be a victim. As a guy, I see a lot of other guys go too far on the other side, where they say, like, just keep pushing forward and turn off your feelings. I think the transformative power of understanding how to get deeper into your core values comes from feeling it. You got to feel it.
You have to feel it. Like, feel that pain.
Yeah.
It has a purpose.
Right.
But don't dwell in it and look for how you can grow.
Yeah. So once that pain is connected to a core value and a self-awareness, an understanding of who it is you want to be and what values you want to honor, then that pain is ready to be felt because it's going to transform into you becoming a better person.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's not a timeline on that. It could take a couple days. It could take a couple weeks. It could take a couple years or more. But have that self-awareness of that progress and say, okay, well, like with me, like I can look back and say, okay, well, I am better than I was a year ago. I'm way better than I was 2 years ago. But like just having those check-ins of saying, okay, I am still in this time of flux, but things are mellowing out, and just watching that ebb and that flow.
Check in with yourself. That's what we're asking you to do. If you need help with that, be happy to chat. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can talk through that. Be happy to ask you some fantastic questions to help you through. But other than that, I just want to remind you the benefits of core values. But then specifically, let's wrap up with what are the values? What are the benefits of integrity and faith?
Well, and you have a confidence in, like, with integrity. I think integrity and faith are two sides of the same coin. Integrity is faith in yourself, and faith is more external. At least for me, yeah, you can have faith in yourself too, and like believe in yourself, and that's important. But I feel like that is more of an integrity side of where you believe in yourself and you are yourself always. But with faith, like it's more of that external expression of the same thing.
I'll add to integrity, but end on faith. The power of integrity to me is when someone such as my wife says something to the effect of, consciously, unconsciously, the message communicated is, I have faith in you. When the message is, I have faith in you, and I'm the recipient of that faith, that's the thing that wakes me up. That's the thing that makes me think, how do I be worthy of that? How do I man up so that I don't drop the ball on the faith that's been placed on me? And not to say that you live exclusively for others and completely lose your sense of identity, things like that. That's another crisis just waiting to happen. But what I am saying is that there is an ennobling power in knowing that you're someone else's rock, that you're someone else. For me, being someone else's dad, being the dad of two people, being the husband of Miranda, these are big roles. And I get my chance, I get my shot to do it my way. But the thing that's most important to me is knowing there's a responsibility there. And instead of letting it be scary and lean away from it, leaning into it is the thing that helps me become even more of who I want to be. So accepting someone else's faith, someone else's confidence in me helps me develop integrity. And just so I didn't get to talk much about like my relationship to faith, because it's important to me, just didn't show up as a core value necessarily. I think there's so much in life that we can't control. And so it does come down to understanding what it is you can, and then trusting that the things you can't will work out in your favor. I think between the two of us, we've had a lot of firsthand experience where our backs are up against a wall or we're on the edge of a cliff, so to speak, where things just work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have that faith that they will work out, even if it's not how we plan or anticipate.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Help us grow by telling someone you care about what you learned from this episode. If you want personalized help navigating your current challenges, connect with me on LinkedIn and let's have a conversation.
If you think our program is what you need, then we'll make you an offer. If not, we part friends. I am Sam Henniger, the Courage Coach for Executives. Studies have shown that your brain's ability to successfully convert new information into knowledge that sticks with you can be multiplied 10 to 20 times when a session of learning is concluded with reflection. If you're able, please join me for a few minutes of personal integration. I will close my eyes, inhale through my nose, and exhale through my mouth. I'm thinking of the impressions I received during this episode, connecting new ideas to facts and experiences I already have, and then allowing myself to focus back to the present moment. I'm grateful to have spent this time with you. The music will play us out. Thank you for joining in the journey.